One thing before we start. You find remote controls underneath your seats. Maybe you find them now. Just have a look. They're just underneath your seats. If you're lucky, if you don't have one, then you can relax. For those of you who have found one, please grab it now, because I will be asking you a question now. These voting tool questions are sponsored by Score Media. So I will be asking you that. Did you hear that? Score Media. That's the sponsor. Good. So the question, please, can I please see the questions that we have for this voting tool? Good. You can see it here. So we've got two answers. And the question is programmatic dead? Answer number one, no, programmatic isn't dead. Programmable is just old wine in new bottles. Number two, yes, programmatic is dead, while programmatic was nothing more than real-time bidding of advertising space. The programmable age includes much more. Vote now, please. 1 or 2, what you think is the answer. Guys, tell me, what do you think? What is going to be the answer looking like? No.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Everybody hear me? I don't think it's dead at all. In fact, I think we're just at the very early stages of it. And if I look at the last few years with our clients, most of the focus has been on media efficiencies, saving money, better targeting, et cetera. But if you extrapolate programmatic, I think over the next couple of years, as the Internet of Things materializes, as TV gets plugged into the Internet, as all these objects get connected to the Internet, I actually think programmatic will be pretty fundamental. And I think you almost have to look at it. I always say it's a bit like Viagra. Because when Viagra was first invented, it was obviously for angina. It was for pains with your heart. And when they did the lab experiments, obviously there was a slightly different result when they experimented with the drug. And to me, programmatic's the same thing. While it's been about media efficiencies, in the future, I think it will actually be more about CRM, a way that you can communicate with your customers at scale in a very personalized way, but across multiple different devices.
Don't dive too deep into the topic already. I just want to.
It's okay. We got to get the vote
What is
in.
your take on number 1 and 2? What do you think? What is going to be the percentage?
Oh, I don't know. I would hope with this crowd, we're probably 90% that it isn't dead, but we'll find out.
Okay.
Michael's in real trouble.
Michael is different, I'm quite sure.
I actually agree with everything Norm just said, but we think that that describes a future that's different than the original introduction of programmatic, which was very much about real-time bidding on websites. And when you look at the billions of consumers across billions of devices and the thousands of brands trying to reach those consumers, the only way to have really intelligent one-to-one conversations with those consumers is to evolve past what we've been doing for many years. So you can call that the next wave of programmatic. You could call that what we call programmable. But it's something fundamentally different than what we have had to date. And I think that it all comes back to data, to marketer data, and being able to use that data and control that data to have those conversations, because it's impossible to scale our messaging across all those mediums and devices and things like that otherwise. We think programmable is a relevant term because we think in order to be able to use that data to talk to for marketers to talk to consumers, that you have to be able to have access to real-time data. You have to be able to customize algorithms. And that is fundamentally different from the way that programmatic works today.
Okay. So I see some shaking hands. Before I get your answer, can I just have the numbers? Just in percentage figures, what do you think is going to be the answer?
Sure.
Even for the experts, you see, it's difficult to see the future.
70-30. 70-30.
70-30. What are you saying, Nick?
Okay, I think it will be 50-50.
50-50. Can we have the answers, please? So that we see the results, what the audience is thinking.
60,
okay.
Almost.
All right.
So
Almost
there
zero.
Wow. There you can see. Okay, it's even, yeah. I would say it's almost half-half. So congratulations, you won that one.
Thank you.
So, but you were shaking your hands when it was about programmable.
Yes.
So what both Norm and Mike said sort of fits within my general thoughts. So working with advertisers and marketers of all sizes, I think that we've been finding that programmatic as a term tends to be confusing, and so I tend to worry about adding new terms into the mix, although I wholeheartedly agree that there was an initial push into programmatic that tend to be very focused on reach and targeting, and that as the space is maturing and people are moving across device, there's a lot more opportunity now to lean into the message and customizing that in new ways. And I think that actually is a pretty exciting next stage or next wave that we're headed into, and I think there's a lot to talk about there.
I find that a really interesting piece of data, and I would love to get some feedback from the audience of why 44%. Because when you look at where the internet is going, this extrapolation of devices and data, you can't manage this any other way than through algorithms and through data. And particularly in a world of ad blocking, I think programmatic can actually be a useful tool because it helps you understand when not to put an ad in front of somebody because it may annoy them. So to me, it's a really interesting piece of data there.
I agree with you. Programmatic is the foundation that we build the next phase on. The challenge is today, if a brand is going to work with a DSP or an ad network, generally speaking, those folks have an algorithm. And that algorithm may be applied across so many different use cases, a CPG, a travel company, a e-commerce merchant. And so what we're saying is open the whole thing up and allow companies to customize algorithms on a per agency basis, per brand basis, per campaign basis. And that is fundamentally, that's going to be required in order to really scale this thing. Because there's no one-size-fits-all model when it comes to data science.
Yeah, I would
So
agree with
can
that.
can I just interrupt briefly? Because
Yeah.
can I have just your
Not a
statement,
problem.
because
Great conversation.
you are in the programmatic marketplace, what you are doing basically, and you're doing real-time advertising. Would you say it's more programmatic, or would you say you are already programmable approach?
I can say we are already programmable, but more and more clients approach us and ask us about the programmable. So I believe that the term appeared 1 year ago, and right now more and more people who are buying the SmartyAds solution, who are buying the bidder, want to get programmable. So we have to kind of educate the market. And from my point of view, I do agree with you that programmatic was a foundation. Programmable is not only about algorithms and the data, it's about the interaction of the SSPs and the DSPs. It's about the pre-bid solution. So when you can tell the SSP before you even bid what you want, and when the SSP can tell you what it looks like, so when you can enrich the bid request with the data, when you can send a lot of micro moments to the DSPs to make this algorithm happen, that's what I think.
But creating these micro moments, as you called them, I think that the micro data is the biggest problem that we have at the moment, because there's no data actually being exchanged in real time very often still. It's still very, I would say, superficial data that we are sharing.
I don't agree with that. I think we've got more data than we know what to do with at times. In fact, I think most clients are frankly overwhelmed by the amount of data.
We have the data, but it's not been exchanged.
I think the big issue with programmatic is the creative. I think that's where we fall down. So virtually every discussion I have with our top clients is just the lack of creative. So we can do all these incredible things. We can do targeting. We've got data. We can come up with the algorithms. We've got massive reach. We can do all sorts of sophisticated adaptive things. But we end up with two banners. And so I think the real pressure point right now is on the creative community to think about programmatic not just as a direct response tool, but as a mechanism to actually communicate with customers across the full consumer journey, all the way from branding past purchase point. Yeah. And I think that's where we're really falling down as an industry at the moment.
I completely agree. There is a real challenge and opportunity around creative. I know you work with a lot of forward-thinking companies, but if you look broadly out in the marketplace, I would say it is a pain point in the marketer community that folks are not leveraging data or even getting it into a place where they can leverage it. We released this year streaming real-time data. So we are streaming in real-time data back to our customers to be able to use in making smarter decisions. That's something that's not commonly done in the market. It's something that we made a massive investment into that is going to allow marketers to take advantage of signals in real time. And that's just in the online channel. And so while I do agree with you that there are forward-looking and thinking marketers out in the marketplace that are effectively using data, there are actually quite a lot that aren't yet. And I think that getting all of that across, again, these billions of devices and campaigns and consumers is really one of the major challenges for the year ahead. And so maybe we're sitting here a year from now and we're not saying it's called programmable. Maybe we've decided it's called something else. But I know that the technology is evolving so quickly that we'll be talking about a significant amount of change from what we're doing today if marketers really want to be having those one-to-one conversations with their consumers across this entire Internet of Things and other landscape.
I tend to agree a bit with Norm with regards to like our data shows that like up to 70% of marketing outcomes are driven by the creative, and when I think about what the most under-tapped opportunity is, although Mike, to your point, there's a lot of data not yet being leveraged to its fullest to even get to the right impression and the right user. But if we think about, like a great example is a customer we work with, L'Oreal, and we're working with one of their sunscreen brands. In addition to sort of figuring out that right user, they focused in on their audience list, and they did that very well. But they added in location signals, and they added in weather to create really customized creatives for every user. And that's actually where I think like sort of that next wave is going to start to manifest itself in pretty cool ways. And to your point, really tap into the brand opportunity that I think programmatic it can deliver on a promise for.
I know that we wanted to have some creative person here on stage, but they are hiding. And I wonder why they're not coming on stage, to be fairly honest, because maybe they are not seeing it. Do you have any experience on that? Can you
Well, you know, to add on what's been said, I believe that the problem about the data, first of all, is the cost of the data to a lot of advertisers, especially if we are talking about smaller advertisers. And the creative problem is the same one. So not every advertiser, especially if we are talking about small business, can allow to have high-quality creatives. Not all of them can leverage the power of the data because they can't reach it. They don't have the personnel for that. They don't have experience about that. So
but there's agencies that can handle it for them, right?
Well, back to the data point, because I think this is quite interesting. You brought up weather, and this is where I get the big data term drives me nuts. Because actually, we've got quite a few clients, Unilever, others, that use weather. It's one singular data point that they use that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And you know, the other example I would give is Orbitz, which is a travel company in Sweden. And when they look at targeting you, they look at your operating system. So how many people have an Android phone here?
How many people Android?
Right. How many have an iPhone? Right. So when you have an Android phone, they'll suggest, if you're looking for a hotel in Cologne, the Holiday Inn. If you have an iPhone phone, they'll suggest the Ritz-Carlton, because they know iPhone users tend to spend more than Android users. So again, I think you have to get past this big data concept and actually just find those singular pieces of data that you know have some correlation or causation with an impact on a customer.
But isn't that exchange of data? Because I'm seeing that in various cases. I'm also consulting. I'm also seeing companies, and I see how much they're actually sticking to their data and not wanting to exchange it with somebody else. So isn't that the main problem very often, that the companies are not opening up and just handing out the data? Isn't that more or less that we are exchanging basic data between agencies and technology companies?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the creation of data silos on the internet is one of the major factors holding us back from this future of being able to intelligently use data. We have, these quote-unquote walled garden companies like Google or Facebook that don't allow the marketers to bring their full data set to the conversation. And I do think that holds back the future, even if it advances their near-term business interests. If a marketer that Norm is working with has decided to select a technology vendor, say they choose Adobe or someone like that, and say, we want this company to be our technology stack to manage our communications with our customers, they can't use that data set to target consumers inside Google or inside Facebook. And that's a giant black hole, I think, as it relates to this future. So I think the exchange of data and the openness of platforms to speak with one another is critically important to realizing the full promise of programmatic or programmable or whatever we want to call it. And I think it requires everybody to get on board.
Okay, what do you think about...
I think you'd have to talk to Dan and Google about that, because they're notorious in the industry. We're quite open with data. When we work with our clients, we want to do the best for them. And of course, we may have some proprietary data sets that we believe have some value, but for the most part, we're trying to help them build up their DMPs and their data.
Yeah, I think every company that we work with is trying to strike the right balance of bringing data to the table that makes the most for their business. And Mike, even earlier in this panel, you had mentioned about the ability to customize that algorithm a bit and bring some of that unique special sauce. And so we're working obviously with all the major DMPs to understand how to activate their own unique intelligence. Particularly, I know the agency community has invested a lot in these strategies, and the way that we can now apply those onto our own inventory, like Google's owned and operated, and Exchange, as well as many other partners in the ecosystem. I think DoubleClick has had a really strong commitment to activating those data sets in the right way. But I think you're right that everyone's sort of coming to the table with like, what can we bring that we can also keep unique. And I think that is a bit of the challenge to your point around, like, we've got so much data, how much of it is valuable and how much of it is commoditized.
What do you think about the data fraud and, well, the data transparency? So when you go to different DMPs, what I personally try to do, when you try to match a single user through different DMPs, sometimes they simply do not match. Isn't the technology yet there, or is it the outdated cookies, the outdated IDFAs? What do you think about that?
Yeah,
so how to fight that?
I do think we're in a point in our industry where the shift to multiple devices has really made it challenging, right, for a cookie-based ecosystem to continue to evolve. We're working obviously on a lot of things to sort of understand that user journey across devices, to try and have an understanding of that user and then apply that audience so that it can happen across those devices. We try to make a lot of those solutions available through data transfer. Yeah. We try to make a lot of those solutions available through the targeting that we provide on the DoubleClick stack. But you know what, we're still a work in progress, I think, as an industry, right? There's this IDFA, Android ID approach. There are companies that are creating deterministic and probabilistic graphs and a combination of each. I think it's all really interesting. And it's an experimentation time, I think, as we're transitioning from a bit of the old desktop browser cookie-based world into one that's not even just solely mobile, but really across a lot of different devices.
But isn't it, I mean, we are talking at DMEXCO now, I would say probably for the last 5 to 6 years about programmatic, and I'm always having these kind of discussions and always these kind of panels, and I always get the feeling when I'm out there at customers, they haven't even understood what it actually is, because they actually don't care about it. They hand it over, they hand the budgets over to their agencies, and basically saying, do whatever you want to do with it, make it as efficient as possible, and leave me alone. Is that something you experience yourself as well? Or
well, the efficiency is another problem, because the cost of the efficiency is the problem. So some agencies might make the campaign really efficient and beautiful. The problem is how many costs will be added on the actual media buying price, and should the client and the agencies have their own DSPs? Because to my humble opinion, the programmable age is when every advertiser can allow himself or herself not to be locked into a single DSP or into a single agency, but when the data could travel all around, when we could have those data exchanges, as you said.
Yeah, I actually don't really feel like our customers are just handing it over and saying good luck. I actually think that increasingly marketers directly are like, I want to be able to own my own data space. I want to have a single view of my customer, and whether I work with a single provider to consolidate across buying is one aspect. Another is I want to be able to be portable and flexible around an innovative company that may be doing something amazing in video, for example.
But those are probably the sophisticated companies, like bigger companies, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, all these kind of huge companies. They're thinking about doing that. Obviously, SAP, IBM. They entered the market now. Yeah. They are changing it probably. We have a panel afterwards in the afternoon where we're talking about this. What is your take on SAP going in that market?
Why is it, can I just ask a question on your last one? Why is it necessarily an either or about marketers wanting to take control as opposed to push to their agencies? I mean, my understanding is that marketers are asking agencies a lot these days to articulate their strategy as it relates to, maybe it's called programmatic, or maybe it's just called data and analytics. But there's been a lot of media review activity, and I think a lot of it's at the heart of it. No?
Yeah, I totally disagree with what you said, but it may be the nature of the clients that we work with that are very big global clients, but they're spending a lot of time thinking about this. And I'd say perhaps the biggest issue that they're grappling with right now partly caused by Dan, is these little solar systems that are being developed of these closed ecosystems of Google and AOL, Verizon, and Facebook, and how do you, either through deterministic means or probabilistic means, how do you stitch all these things together? So, in a way, media agencies have almost become guardians of the galaxy. You got to have somebody that's keeping an eye, because the reality is, within Dan's world, and every report I've ever seen back from Google suggests the same thing: spend more money on search, spend more money on YouTube, spend more money on Google Display. And you need somebody that's objective, that's sitting across all of these different closed ecosystems, say actually that is not the case. They're not giving any credit to Facebook, and they're not giving any credit to television, or whatever the case may be. So I think they're grappling with how do you connect all these things together and objectively measure what's really making an impact, which is why we've taken a meta DSP approach, where we actually don't work with just one single DSP. We'll work with Google, but we'll also work with Amazon, we'll work with AppNexus, and a variety of them, because we believe you have to stitch these worlds together. People don't just live in a Google ecosystem.
I actually think that's a pretty interesting place for the agency ecosystem to be, where they do add a ton of value, right? If a marketer is going to take a portfolio approach, and there are unique buckets of inventory that you want to be able to take access to, but they're measured in a different way, or they've got a different understanding of the user journey, how do you bring all of that together? And I think that's absolutely a critical part of how agencies in particular are investing. And I think it's a pretty exciting time in terms of a next phase for that.
But that is exactly the question. So how do we bring it together in the end? Because at the moment, everybody's kind of sticking to their own worlds. Everybody, we're talking about wallet guns for probably 5 years now. So what needs to happen in the industry that programmatic really kicks off, and then I have an experience like I call it the Spotify experience, where I actually get to know music I wouldn't come across probably never in my life, but they take my data, they realize what's interesting for me, they know all my songs, they know everything about me, and I get fantastic new groups to know. But that's the idea, more or less, right?
I think we need to get the friction out of the system and recognize that, as they say, he who has the goal makes the rules. The marketer is in charge. The future, I think if you put a poll up on the screen, said, who thinks that the future here is marketers being able to leverage data and have intelligent conversations, 100% of the people would say yes. So we all need to get out of the way and help the marketers do that.
Do you think that marketers in general will put their bets on all these kind of machine learning, sophisticated solutions in the future? Do you think they will rely on that, or will they still want to have, as you said before, there needs to be somebody taking control over all the systems? What is your take on it?
I call it the data singularity. So when we won't really need the media buyers and the media planners to target, the domain lists, as many people still do, but when the machine will know exactly how to reach the campaign goals in the most efficient way. And it's already happening at some extent. I believe that in the closest, let's say, 5 years, all the industry will shift that way. So we will leave the space to the creative agencies, we will leave the space to the goals of the marketers, and we will get all the intermediaries and all the fraud out of the way. I mean, it's not the science fiction. It's something that is happening today already.
Yeah, I don't see how marketers of any size cannot see the need to embrace some level of technology and automation in their marketing practice. There's so much data available. There's so much user behavior that's accessible in digital marketing and in traditional marketing. Take an example like just from a small business standpoint, right? There's more and more user impressions going in-app. There's more and more shifting to mobile. Publishers are responding with native advertising assets. You can't possibly work with every publisher that you want to reach your user on to create. Obviously you will with large publishers, but from a native ads experience, how are you going to be able to build that at scale and personalize the message? That's one of the reasons why we invested on native on our DoubleClick platform, and also on AdWords, where marketers of any size can give us just the assets that they need to be able to deliver their message, and we'll make that fit the form and function of wherever they deem is appropriate when they find the right impression for that user. So I'm not sure how a digital marketer could not see the need to embrace automation.
So are we talking about a machine learning world in the future, and that whole kind of programmable or programmatic, whatever we want to call it in the future? Are we talking, is it in general, is it completely necessary for marketers to understand how these systems work, how this technology, because it's a huge ecosystem, I mean, if you're looking at the LumaScape, it's 300 partners, probably all contributing to that world, and nobody really knows where data is wandering in which direction.
I think to Michael's point earlier, knowing what data they want to bring into that learning system or that algorithm, I think, is super important because it'll optimize for the outcomes that are most important for that marketer. So getting the data right doesn't have to be a big data piece. It can be a really unique customer insight, and again, our customers of all sizes have like very unique insights about what's going to drive their business. If they bring that to bear, they can scale it with the technology. But I'd love to hear others.
I think the danger. It's fun to say these really strong statements about things, but the reality is we don't live in a binary world. I've been doing digital since 1995, and I've been hearing for years that television's going to die, and it's still around. So, I think there will be a space for algorithms and programmatic and machine learning, but there's also room for alchemy and ideas and creativity, and the two can coexist quite happily together. And indeed, I think data will help with that alchemy. It'll help us come up with better ideas. And if I'm on the client side, I would be looking for an agency that can help me do both of those things, and I think they complement each other.
So in terms of, because you're closest to creation, in a way,
yes.
I would say as an agency. So what makes an efficient ad today? Because it's kind of in programmatic, everybody thinks this is all automated, it's all kind of boring stuff, inverted commas. It's like search ads that we have known of, that the Facebook ads that are not really kind of smart in a way. So what defines a clever ad for you?
Well, I still think there's an incredibly important role for creative agencies. They really get brands, and I think it's important to have that foundation. And I think for most clients that have large product launches, they're still going to do a big TV ad, or they'll do a big video ad, whatever the case may be. We've got Nike as one of our clients. When World Cup time rolls around, they're going to do something really big, as they should. I just think what's changing around that is the adaptivity. It's the more the programmatic, it's more the alchemy, it's the more real-time creation of assets or the deployment of assets. And I do believe that's where the industry is struggling at the moment. Whether media agencies step in, I know the ad tech companies are all over this. I know Google are trying to help solve this, because the reality is, we can't do a lot of the things on the media side that we would like to do unless we have some of those assets, both on the programmatic side or on the alchemy side as well.
Right, it makes a great pitch, and then if it lands in the creative agency's lap after it's finished, they're like, well, great, we have 3 videos. Right?
So we work with Zoella, one of the big YouTube stars in the UK, and she's fantastic. She creates content like that. We work with Twitter Niche. We work with publishers. So I think clients are really opening up in terms of where they get the content. But having said that, I still think you do need a creative agency that can be the guardian of the brand and come up with that foundational work, which is really critical. Yeah,
if anything, I think the creative agencies become more important, but they also have to become more nimble, right?
Yes, they have to open up a little bit.
So what can technology providers do to kind of approach that programmable age, to bring more speed into the whole market, and that we are not talking, and I'm not sitting here in 5 years again and talking about programmatic. So what makes it that we really kind of kick it off from your end? So because you're kind of the ones why we are sitting here, more or less.
Well, I think we can build the infrastructure to make this data-empowered world work. And I think if you're a marketer and you have the option of bringing data to your decisioning, to campaigns, why wouldn't you? I agree that there will always be, sort of the alchemy, but even in alchemy, isn't there an opportunity to bring some data to the table to make decisions? It wouldn't surprise me if 5 years from now, we have specialist data science teams inside the agency, or maybe even inside.
We already have them now.
You already have that.
You're exactly right, because Zoella, who creates those little great videos, she's in her bedroom. We did it for Unilever, All Things Hair. And how we identify the content is through search data. So we look at the trends around hairstyles. So we use the data to basically inform the content strategy.
They can start to
but Michael,
trends based on search
would you say it's the agencies that need to provide these data scientists, or is it actually the customers? Because my view is there's actually both probably need those data scientists.
It's an interesting thing, because we haven't talked about actual people, and the funny thing of the data ownership is actually the people that produce the data don't actually own it. And the one thing I would think you may see over the next 5 years is we've talked about personal data lockers before, of people trying to regain control of their data. And I know some of the big telecoms companies are looking at that because the reality is other people are monetizing the information that we're putting on some of these platforms, and you're not making anything out of it. Now, granted, you're getting free content in exchange for that, but in a world of ad blocking, it's quite an interesting of that equilibrium being slightly distorted.
Okay, so you've heard the sound. That sound basically tells us we have to leave the stage more or less.
I was hoping we could do the vote again to see if we changed anybody's mind.
So we have basically time for a a tweet, basically 140 characters. Tell us, where's the programmatic world in 5 years' time?
Cross-screen behavior, optimized for better user experience. Is that 140?
Should be okay.
Neuroscience plus no media buyers and planners plus affordable platforms and media buying.
Okay.
Well,
Michael.
my tweet would be directed to the marketers out in the audience who I don't think need to have the data science teams. I think they can work with the agencies. But my message would be know who's managing your data or somebody else is.
Okay, good.
That's a long tweet. Are you using
No,
the
I
new
think
tweet
that's
It
rules?
was a bit of a blog post, but it's
I'd
fair.
say programmatic is the new CRM. You need to look at it in a very different way. It's not just a media efficiency tool.
That's a lovely last word on the efficiency debate.